I went back to Jamaica, and there were maybe, I would say, few women in the profession. I don't know if I would put it at 20%, but what I would say is, although there were role models in terms of women who had excelled and distinguished themselves in law, it was still very much a male domain. And the top end of the profession in terms of judges, the lawyers who had taken silk, which is the high point of the profession in terms of peer recognition and judicial and professional recognition, there were very few women. So it's not that you were rank outsiders, but you weren't expected to rise to the surface. And you weren't expected necessarily to equal the men at that stage. But I had always seen myself as an advocate, not very interested in chamber work, and in particular, I was hugely excited by criminal advocacy. And I did a lot of work in the gun court. I did a lot of, even in the young stages going in as a young lawyer, I appeared with more senior lawyers for probably up to 5 years at the bar, in murder cases, gun court cases, a lot of high-end work, and also in the Court of Appeal. It's a beautiful island, Jamaica, but we have huge challenges with crimes of violence, and in particular murders and gun crimes. That is, crimes involving the use of firearms. So there was established, I think it was about in the early 1970s, a court that was essentially a court dealing with firearms offenses. And it's either holding preliminary inquiries in cases involving the use of firearms, such as murders and robberies, or in cases where there was simply possession of firearms or possession of ammunition. So there were also issues concerning the constitutionality of the court, and it was a very exciting time because it was still a fairly young court and the law was being developed. So I was very lucky to cut my eye teeth, so to speak, on that type of work. And I also lectured in law at that point, but as I said, my ambition was to do well and distinguish myself in criminal law, and also in my Supreme Court work and in my appellate work. And that was a dream. I had to juggle the raising of my children and my domestic life with the practice of criminal law, the practice of law, because even though I say criminal law, I did do other areas of law which were my bread and butter work, because 90% of criminals in Jamaica are poor people. So I did a lot of legal aid work for the poor, but I did other work which I didn't find always as enjoyable because I had to earn. But to get back to the point, I had years and years of grind with, I would say, no acknowledgement in terms of financial returns and even peer acknowledgement. But I always tried to be well prepared and to do my matters as best as I could, and when I made mistakes, to use them as a learning curve to go forward. And one day I realized that I really hadn't achieved some of the things that I thought I would have achieved when I first started out. And a very highly placed member of the Jamaican judiciary invited me to become a member of the bench in Jamaica. And I was recommended by my bar association and had support, but it didn't work out. And I often look back and think that that was for a reason, and that was fate playing its role in determining the path ahead for me. Because had I gone into the Jamaican judiciary, I don't know if I would have ended up eventually in international criminal law in the way that I did. I'm not saying a member of the bench in Jamaica couldn't have, but my introduction at that point in the into the judiciary in Jamaica, I don't think I would have been asked to be nominated in the way that I did eventually. Up to now, I can't believe it. Even though it happened in 2005. And I always say it's the best Valentine's Day present that I ever had, because I actually got my nomination request late on Valentine's Day of 2005. And when I opened the letter and I read it, it came from my Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jamaica. And I said, this is some crazy early April Fool's joke. I mean, it's not April the 1st as yet. And it was a request from my then Minister of Foreign Affairs of Jamaica to ask if I could be nominated for the position of an ad litem judge with the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia. And I said, rock star. What is this? So I responded to the letter by calling, and they said, no, the minister would like you to be nominated. So I said, well, thought about it. I said, okay. And I accepted the nomination, and I was duly nominated. And the elections were held. And frankly, at that point, I tried not to think about whether or not I would be elected. But then I got a call when I was least expecting it to say that I had been elected and placed quite highly in the election. So that was... I got some encouragement from that fact. I didn't do any active canvassing myself because I understood that the Jamaican mission in New York would handle it on my behalf, that my CV was important, that it spoke for itself, and that they would take care of everything. And that was how it was handled. There was still a lot of humility and no cause for celebration. I didn't tell a soul, not even my mother, quite frankly, because I understood that out of the 27 judges who were actually elected by the General Assembly, that only 9 of them would be called. So I said, well, there is a chance that you might not be called. So I still had to set about the business of continuing my practice, but I had to not take work that would be long-term work and that would tie me up. So that was very, very challenging because I had a very strong practice at that time, and there were people who were coming and maybe wanted me especially, and it was difficult to handle. And then one day out of the blue, I got a call, and it was from the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, from the chef, the cabinet. And she said, I can remember Judge Nosworthy. And my response was, I'm not George Nosworthy, I'm Judge. I'm not George Nosworthy, I'm Janet Nosworthy. So she said, no, Judge Nosworthy. And I said, boy, that sounds good. That was my only moment of vanity in all of that, you know. I said, boy, that sounds good when she said Judge Nosworthy.
Yeah.
And I still really hadn't shared it with many people, to tell you the truth, because I didn't know whether I would go, as I said. But she said, we want you to come. Can you be here in 3 weeks?
Oh.
So I said, 3 weeks? That's a very, very short time. So I said instinctively, well, it was the sensible question to ask. If I don't come this time, will you save a place for me for the next time? And she said, we're not certain. So I said, yes, yes, right away. So I gave a very loud, resounding yes, and I was thinking, what have I let myself into? How am I going to wind my practice down and get there within 3 weeks?
Yeah.
So fortunately, my mum is a lawyer, and she was retired, in semi-retirement, and I had to ask her to come and help with the winding down of my practice and putting systems in place. And I was literally running around like a chicken without an egg for those 3 weeks, you know, getting the visas in order, getting my notices out to my clients, telling them about the fact that I regretted having to leave, and just setting a system in process there when to cover the period after I would have left.